First song will be 682. To God be the glory. 682. We just sing this song and we'll have our scripture reading this morning. Let's all sing together. To God be the glory, great things He hath done. So loved He the world that He gave us His Son, who yielded His life through Jesus the Son. But purer and higher and greater will be our wonder, our transport, when Jesus we see. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord, let the earth hear His voice. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord, let the people rejoice. To the Father through Jesus the Son, and give Him the glory, great things He hath done. Scripture reading this morning will be from Revelation chapter 15, verse 1. And I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels having 7 last plagues, for in them is filled up the wrath of God. And I saw, as it were, a sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast, and over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name, stand on the sea of glass, having the harps of God. And they sing the song of Moses, the servant of God, and the song of the Lamb, saying, Great and marvelous are thy works, Lord God Almighty, just and true are thy ways, thou King of saints. Who shall not fear thee, O Lord, and glorify thy name? For thou only art holy, for all nations shall come and worship before thee, for thy judgments are made manifest. The song we'll sing before we go to God in prayer will be number 40. 40. Be with me, Lord. Number 40. Be with me, Lord. I cannot live without thee. I dare not try to take one step alone.
benedict thy word, light your own lives first. Help us to worship in spirit and truth this day and grow spiritual. In Jesus' name we pray.
Now turn to number 415. 415. More about Jesus. 415. More about Jesus would I know, more of His grace to others show, more of His saving fullness see, more of His love that died for me. More about Jesus. More about Jesus. More of His saving fullness see. More of His love who died for me. More about Jesus let me learn. More of His holy will discern. Spirit of God, my teacher be, showing union with my Lord, hearing His voice in every line, making each faithful saying right. More about Jesus. More about Jesus. More of His saving fullness see. More of His love who died for me. More about Jesus on His throne, riches and glory all His own. More of His kingdom should increase. More of His coming Prince of Peace. More about Jesus. More about Jesus. More of His saving fullness see. More of His love who died for me. You at this time mark 770. 770, while Jesus whispers. That'll be a song of encouragement and the extension of our Lord's invitation. After you have that mark, if you would turn over to 421. 421, Love Lifted Me. We'll sing this song for the rest of the hour. If you'd like to stay as we sing, you may. I was sinking deep in sin, far from the peaceful shore, very deeply stained within, seeking to rise no more. But the Master of the sea heard my despairing cry. From the waters lifted me, now safe am I. Love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me, love lifted me, love lifted me, when the fruit, merits thy soul's best song. Faithful, loving service to him belongs. Love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me, love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me. Souls in manger look above, Jesus completely saves. He will lift you by his love out of the angry waves. He's the master of the sea, billows his will obey. He, your Savior, wants to be saved today. Love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me, love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me. Be seated, please.
Welcome this morning. Appreciate your presence. To be able to study God's Word together in a few minutes and think about our lives and our soul's destiny. God's will for us today. The subject for today is frustration. Frustration. And I have subtitled it God's Plans and Man's Devices. And our internalization verse for this week is Galatians 2 and verse 21. It says, I do not frustrate the grace of God, for if righteousness gained by the law, then Christ died in vain. The Bible talks about frustrations. It's mentioned 3 times in the Bible. This is one of them. We're going to look at, not all of them necessarily, but we're going to look at the foundation of frustration in our lives and in relation to our soul, in our destiny from this life. Frustration, I think we all know or experience frustration in our lives. We understand what frustration is. We understand it because we relate to it emotionally. How many times have you said or have you heard said, I'm so frustrated. I've told my kids to, and you can fill in the blank, pick up their toys, clean up their room, do this, do that, and I've told them over and over and over again, and they just don't do it. They can't get it done. We get frustrated emotionally. We understand what frustration is from an emotional point in our lives. We say things like, well, I've practiced, I've tried, and I just can't get it right. I'm so frustrated with the efforts or the outcome of what I've been trying to get done. So we understand it emotionally and how it affects us in that respect. But we need to also understand what frustration is or what it means to be frustrated from a different standpoint in the sense of as a verb or a noun. I don't know exactly the particle of speech that it is, but is defined as making worthless or of no avail. To nullify. Some synonyms for the word frustrate are to foil, to obstruct, to prohibit, to negate, to defeat, to cancel out. So we understand that frustration is not just an emotion, but is actually something that is happening or an action that takes place. And so we need to look at it from that standpoint as well. To be frustrated is to defeat something or to stop something or to prohibit something from happening that we want to happen that somebody else wants to happen? Do we frustrate the things of God? Might be the question we would ask. What frustrates us? How is frustration produced? And how do we deal with frustration in our lives? Is important for us to think about for just a few minutes in our lives. I don't know, if we were to step back and look at our lives today and say, well, I'm a frustrated person. I don't know how many in the room would say, well, yeah, that describes me exactly. But I know that throughout the week and as we go through life that we do experience frustration. We want to think about it from a spiritual standpoint. Are we frustrating God and His plans? Are we frustrated with our lives, spiritually speaking, and what are we doing to make sure that we are on the right path and not frustrating God or being frustrated in our efforts to make it to heaven? I think if we're going to have to do this, we have to understand first and foremost what God's plans are so that we understand that we're frustrating God's plans for us. I've got a few passages of Scripture that I want us to think about what God's plans are for us today. First one I've got here is 1 Timothy 2 and verse 4. 1 Timothy 2 and verse 4 says, "Who will have all men," this is God, "to be saved and come into a knowledge of the truth." God's plan for you and for me is for us to be saved. That's His will. 2 Peter 3 and verse 9 is another verse that we can look at about the plans of God. It says, "The Lord is not slack concerning His promises, some men count slackness, but is long-suffering to us, for not willing that any should perish, but all should come to repentance." That talks about the plans of God for you and for me. God's not willing, God does not want, it's not in God's plans for any of us to lose our soul. As a matter of fact, it's God's plan for you and I to come to repentance in our lives so that we will be up with or match up with God's plan for you and me. Another verse that talks about the plans of God for you and I, we read in our scripture reading this morning. Revelation 15 and verse 4, it says, "Who shall not fear thee, O Lord, and glorify thy name? For thou only art holy. For all nations shall come and worship before thee, for thy judgments are made manifest." God's plans for you and I are for today and one day in eternity to stand before God and to glorify God in His name for all His judgments and all the things that He's done for us. It's God's plan to save us that we might be in heaven. That would be a bottom line, that we might say God's plan is for us. Are we frustrating God's plans for us to save us? But it goes a little deeper than that when we think about God's plans for you and I today. Ecclesiastes 12:13, a passage that we all know pretty well, says, "Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the whole duty of man." It's God's plans for you and me to fear Him, to respect Him, and to do what He says to do. Secondly, we can think about what God's plans for us are in our activities today. In Psalms 18 verse 3, it says, "I will call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised, so shall I be saved from mine enemies." God's plan for you and me today in our lives is to worthily praise Him as He so rightfully deserves. Romans 16 and 27 says about the same thing about what God's plan for you and I are today. It says, "To God only wise be glory through Jesus Christ forever." Amen. God's plans for us to worship and praise Him through Jesus Christ in this life and in eternity. But then also, when we think about what God's plans for us, we have to turn and look at Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 10 where it says, "For we are His workmanship, created in Jesus Christ unto good works, which God hath before ordained that we should walk in them." It is the plan of God for yours and my life to be His workmanship, to do good deeds in His name, as He has ordained for us from the very beginning. Are we frustrating the plans of God in what He wants to do to us and through us, for us in our lives? If we look at our lives, are we frustrating God? And are we feeling, in the sense, that we are frustrated in our efforts to please God along these lines? We need to be able to evaluate our lives along these lines to make sure that we are not, in some way, form, or fashion, defeating what God's plan for us is, because that would be total catastrophe for us in the sense of eternity and our soul's destiny. When we consider the goals and desires of our lives, are we acting in ways that fulfill the plans of God? Are these goals pleasing God, or are we set out on the course of our own devices rather than trying to administer God's plans for us in our life? When I think about our plan or God's plans for us and the things that we're doing in this life, we have to understand that good intentions do not eliminate frustration. We may have the greatest of intentions to please God and to do God's will and think that everything's going to be okay because we have a good heart and we want to do what's right. But that doesn't help us or keep us from being frustrated in our own lives as far as that goes. And it does not stop us from frustrating the will of God or the plans of God for us. Many people today want to please God. Many people today have the desire to have God in their lives. They want to worship Him. And that's really what it's all about, and that's good. But that does not mean that God's will is not being frustrated. Just because we have the desire and we have the intention of doing it, we still may be frustrating God in our lives. We have to be very careful. I was thinking about this, and I saw an article came up on my phone, an article about flash mobs. Everybody knows what a flash mob is. Everybody gets together and decides that they want to go somewhere and just do something, maybe a mall or something like that. But this was a particular man about 5 years ago that decided that, churches weren't being filled anymore. They were all being, just a few people were going. And so he decided that he would start a flash mob going to churches. So he posted on Facebook to gather a group of people and we would go flash mob the Catholic Church. And so he did that, and about 5 years ago, and about 300 people showed up at church. And he's been doing that over and over. And in Detroit, they've done it 6 times this year. And they've had as many as 1,000 people that show up for church. The priest says, this is a good thing. It fills the pews, it fills the coffers, everybody's happy. This man that does this says, man, this is a great thing, and we're going to continue to do it as long as everybody likes to do it. But it's flash mobbing what it's all about as far as praising and honoring God. They feel good about it. They think it's a good thing. But is it really truly something that is praising God and accomplishing God's will? Or is it frustrating the will of God? That's what we're looking at here. Is what we're doing in our lives like this situation. How do we evaluate it as to whether or not it's acceptable to God and pleasing to God, and God is going to bless us and be with us for it? Or is it something that's completely contrary to what God's will is, and we're just frustrating the will or the plans of God, and it's going on down the road thinking that everything's okay? That's the aspect that we're looking at. Are we frustrating God and frustrating ourselves by the things that we do? We have an example in the Old Testament that I want us to think about of a man who wanted to be close to God and wanted to have God close to him. And it was his intention to be close to God and have God close to him, and he was going to bring God to it. It's found in 1 Chronicles chapter 13. We're going to talk about David for just a minute. David had an honorable intention, but it had catastrophic results because of what he wanted to do, and it frustrated God's will. In 1 Chronicles chapter 13, if you'd like to turn there, it says, and David consulted with the captains of the thousands and hundreds and every leader. And David said unto the congregation of Israel, it seems good unto you that it be of the Lord our God, let us send abroad unto our brethren everywhere that are left in the land of Israel, and with them also to the priests and the Levites which are in the cities and the suburbs, that we may gather them unto us. And let us bring again the ark of God to us, for we inquired not it in the days of Saul. And all the congregation said that they would do so, for the thing was right in the eyes of all people. David, a man who knew God, who had been with God, who had accomplished a lot of great things for God, was now in a situation where he wanted to draw closer to God. He wanted God close to him. And in order to do that, he felt like he had to have the Ark of the Covenant there with him. It had been taken by the Philistines many years ago. And they had sent it up, and it had been staying in a town in Abinadab's house for a long time and not been in Jerusalem. And so David wanted to get God up there with him where he could commune with him through the Ark of the Covenant or with the Ark of the Covenant. And so he got everybody together and said, hey, let's do this thing. let's get together, let's bring the ark up. And everybody said, that sounds great. That will be a blessing to us all. We need to do that. Verse 5 says this, though. Speaking of the man's desires to do it and the devices that he plans that puts together in order to accomplish what he wants to do with God. Verse 5 says, so David gathered all Israel together from Shihor of Egypt, even into the entering of Hemath, to bring the ark of God from Kirjatharim. And David went up, and all Israel to Bethel, that is to Kirjatharim, which belonged to Judah, to bring up this, the ark of God, the Lord, that dwelleth between the cherubims, whose name is called on it. And they carried the ark of God in a new cart out of the house of Abinadab, and Uzzah and Ohio drave the cart. They had a great plan. They put together this great plan, and they were going to bring God to them. They were going to get together with God, and so they devised this plan to bring God to them. They put it on a cart, and they began to carry it. When we think about what happens here, we have to first, of course, let's look back at what God said about the Ark of the Covenant and how things were to be handled with the Ark of the Covenant. To discover that, we go back to Exodus chapter 25, when the Ark of the Covenant was first made. In verse 10 it says, and they shall make an ark of shittim wood. 2 cubits and a half shall be the length thereof, a cubit and a half the breadth thereof, and a cubit and a half the height thereof. And thou shalt overlay it with pure gold. Within and without shalt thou overlay it, and shalt make upon it a crown of gold round about. And thou shalt cast 4 rings of gold for it, and put them in the 4 corners thereof. And the 2 rings shall be in the one side of it, and 2 rings in the other side of it. And thou shalt make staves of shittim wood, and overlay them with gold. And thou shalt put staves into the rings by the sides of the ark, that the ark may be borne with them. And it goes on to say in the next verse, I believe it is, I don't have that written down right here, but it says, and they shall remain within those particular rings continually. They were not to be removed from the Ark of the Covenant. And it was said that the priests were to carry the Ark of the Covenant. It was to be borne by the Levites only, no one else. David and the children of Israel devised a way to bring God to them. They put it on an ark. They decided that they were going to do it in a way contrary to how it was to be born, according to what God had made in His plans of the Ark of the Covenant. They were going to do it a different way. They thought that they could have God and still do it according to their devices. And looking at in Chronicles 13 verse 8, at what it says about this particular occasion, what the people thought about it. It says in verse 8, and David and all Israel played before God with their might, with singing, with harps, and with psalteries, and with timbrels, and with cymbals, and with trumpets. Can you just see the picture of what's going on here? Here they come. They're driving the cart up through the streets of Jerusalem. And all the people are on the side just cheering and celebrating and happy. And you hear the music and the singing and the happiness, and everybody's just having a great time. God's with us. What a glorious occasion this is. They're frustrating the plans of God by doing it in this way. Even though they felt like everything was great and glorious, God was not pleased with the situation because they weren't doing it according to the plans of God. They devised their own way. Verse 9 shows what happens when the good intentions are not allayed with the plans of God. Verse 9 says, and when they came into the threshing floor of Jachin, Uzzah put forth his hand to hold the ark, for the oxen stumbled. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah. And he smote him because he put the hand to the ark, his hand to the ark, and there he died. Uzzah lost his life because of all that was going on in this particular situation. When they thought that God was pleased and happy with what was going on, with all that they were doing. This frustrated the plans of God in devising a way to bring God's ark to him. But not only did it produce or cause a frustration in the plans of God, but it also produced frustration in the heart of David. Look at what it says in verse number 11. And David turning out the way that he wanted it to. We can never expect things to turn out right in our relationship with God if we don't go according to the plan of God. We're going to be frustrated in our lives. If we don't lay down our lives and do what God says do in the way that He says do, we're going to live a life of frustration, disappointment in our relationship with God. We can never have God close to us if we fail to follow the plan. We try to do it by devising our own system of following God, of being with God. This is the question that David asked upon this occasion. And it's important for us to ask this same question. How shall the ark of the Lord come to me? David, after this particular situation, was very disappointed, very frustrated with the situation. But after several months, it says that they sent the ark across to another man's house, and it stayed there for 3 months. And eventually, David, after evaluating the situation, came to a sense that says, I need God with me. We need to determine that we have to have God with us if we have any hope in this life. We have to ask the question, how do we get God in our lives? What do we do to get God in our lives? What's the plan that God has for us so that He can be with us and we can have Him in our lives? David's answer to his problem. How do I draw God close to me? First Chronicles, we turn to chapter 15 and look at verse 11. It says there, David called Zadok and Abiathar the priests, for the Levites, Uriel, Messiah, Joel, Shimei, Eliab, and Abinadab, and said unto them, Ye are the chief of the fathers of the Levites. Sanctify yourselves, both ye and your brethren, that ye may bring up the ark of the Lord of Israel to the place that I have prepared for it. For because ye did it not at the first, the Lord our God made a breach upon us, for that we saw Him not after the due order. David stepped back, examined what the Scriptures taught about how the Ark of the Covenant was to be handled, and said, we've done this. So the priests and the Levites sanctified themselves to bring up the Ark of the Lord God of Israel. And the children of the Levites bear the Ark of God upon their shoulders with the staves thereon, and Moses commanded according to the word of the Lord. They followed the plan of God. God blessed them because of that, and they brought the Ark up unto Jerusalem there. Verse 25 of chapter 15. So David and the elders of Israel and the captains over the thousands went to bring up the ark of the covenant of the Lord out of the house of Obed with joy. And it came to pass when God helped the Levites that bare the ark of the covenant of the Lord, that they offered 7 bullocks and 7 rams, and David was clothed with a robe of fine linen. And all the Levites that bare the ark, and the singers of Chennai, the master of the same, sung with singers. David also had upon him an ephod of linen. Thus all Israel brought up the ark of the covenant of the Lord with shouting, and with the sound of the cornet, and with trumpets, and with cymbals, and making a noise, with psalteries and harps. And it came to pass, as the ark of the covenant of the Lord came to the city of David, that Michal, the daughter of Saul, looking out the window, saw King David dancing and playing, and she despised him in her heart. As we see the ark of God coming into the city of Jerusalem, we see this exact same emotions, the exact same feelings that were displayed when the children of Israel and David were trying to bring the ark up in a way that frustrated the plans of God. We have the same feelings, but a lot of people, when they think about following the plans of God, think that that's a boring or a disappointing way to do things. But we see God's Word teaching us that when we follow the plans of God according to it has been laid out, that we have the same results, the same feelings, the same emotions because of what we did. It's a deeper feeling, really, than what we have in not following the plans of God, because we know that we've been pleasing to God and done it the way that He would have us to do. I think it's an interesting side point in verse number 29 about Michal, David's wife, the daughter of Saul. When the children of Israel were doing things according to plan, she was disappointed or frustrated by the situation. So you're not going to please everybody all the time as far as following the plans of God. And we need to be very careful that we don't really concern ourselves with who's frustrated or disappointed by how we do things other than God Himself. Because they're not going to be able to please people all the time. But we need to strive to follow the plan of God and please Him all the time. How do we deal with frustration in our own lives? If we turn to the New Testament, we can see a group of people who Jesus described as frustrated. Extremely frustrated, I would put, in Matthew chapter 7. verses 21 through 23. It says in verse 21, not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Many will say in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? In thy name have cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works. We see a group of people here who thought they were faithful Christians, who thought that they were going to stand in judgment and be told by the Lord, well done, thou good and faithful servant, enter into the joys of thy Lord. But they got a different message from God, or from Christ, at the judgment. Not a commendation on what they had done, but a condemnation for what they had done, because they had not followed after what God had said to do. They failed to follow the plans of God. They had frustrated the plans of God and not being obedient to them, and therefore they were frustrated on the day of judgment when the rewards were being passed out. What a terrible, frustrating day that will be for many who failed to follow the plan of God. James 1:21 and following says, wherefore lay apart all filthiness and superfluity of knowledge, and receive with meekness the engrafted word, which is able to save your soul. But be ye doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving your own selves. For if any be a hearer of the word, and not a doer, he is like unto a man beholding his natural face in the glass. God warns us that we don't need to be just hearers of the word, but we have to make application to those things that are for our benefit in our lives. Jesus made an appeal to the Jews at Jerusalem that I think is very fitting when we think about the plans of God and the devices of man. In Matthew chapter 23, in verse 37, it says, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets and stonest them which were sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered the children together, even as a hen gathereth their chicks unto her wings, and ye would not. Jesus looking at the Jewish nation, looking at all those Israelites, knowing that God had made a promise to them and had done all these things throughout all the years to have them to be His chosen people, to save them, and to see what they were doing in rejecting Him and God's plan for saving mankind. And in verse 38 says, behold, your house is left unto you desolate. For I say unto you, ye shall not see me henceforth till ye shall say, blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. This is an illustration for you and for me of the appeal to God for us to be obedient to what He has told us to do. God's plan starts from the very beginning of time. In Genesis 3, when God said that He would send of the seed of woman to defeat the devil. It goes through the line of Abraham, the promise that was given to him in Genesis chapter 12. When we see the development of the Israelite nation and the promise of coming of Jesus Christ. And we see Jesus coming upon the scene and suffering and dying on the cross, offering Himself as a sacrifice for you and for me. And then we see the establishment of His church, Acts chapter 2, and the appeal of all mankind to come into that church so that they might be saved. That's the plan of God that's laid out for us in His book. If we will but obey what Jesus said to do. Jesus taught that one must believe that He is the Son of God. He must repent of his sins. Let's turn away from those things in his life that he knows is wrong. Confess Him as the Son of God and be baptized. That's the plan that God laid out. Are we frustrating God's plan today by not being obedient to Him when we know that we should? God also laid out that plan that we should live faithfully in this life, forsaking those things of the world and being faithful to Him and His Word. Are we frustrating God's plan today by doing things in our lives that we know are contrary to His Word? Not repenting of them, not putting them out of our lives, not confessing them. Therefore, living in life of frustration in our relationship with God. Frustrating the plan of God for our salvation. Are you living a frustrated Christian life? If you're not a Christian, won't you be obedient to the plan that God has laid out? There's no way that you can devise your own plan to be saved. You need to obey the Lord's invitation. I encourage you now while we have this speech.
We'll sing 752 before we take the Lord's Supper. 752. When my love to Christ grows weak. When my love to Christ grows weak, when for deeper faith I see, then in all I run to thee, God enough, yes, still on me. There I walk amid the shades, while the lingering twilight fades. See that suffering, friendless one, weeping, praying, and alone. When my love for man grows weak, when for stronger faith I see, till of Calvary I go, to thy scenes of fear and woe. There behold his agony, suffered on the bitter tree. See this anguish into life and again. Burning all the work of pain. Burning all the light that lies in the full sacrifice.
Heavenly Father, we come before you now. Thank you for this bread that represents your Son's body, Son on the cross, for the remission of our sins. We ask as Christians that we take this in the one place manner in Christ's name. Now, Father, we come to thee by Jesus, free the vine herbs of the blood of Christ. We pray that each one of us as Christians examine ourselves, take the merciful pleasing in thy sight, thinking back to the crucifixion of thy Son for our sins. This we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Heavenly Father, we pray for another day. We get
together to worship. Please help us about to give them our needs and help us to give as we should. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here this morning. It's great to be able to worship with you. Hope that you can stay and eat with us in our fellowship meal and also our adjusted services. We'll have our second service following our fellowship meal. I wanted to ask the brother that's leading our closing prayer if they would give thanks for our food. Our final song for this morning will be 66. Beautiful. Number 66. Next stand as we sing the song you met. Beautiful robes of white, beautiful land of light, beautiful homes so bright, where there shall come no night. Beautiful crown of wear, shining and bright o'er there, yonder in mansions fair, gather us there. Beautiful road, beautiful land, beautiful road, beautiful land, beautiful land, shining so fair, beautiful land just bright, gather us there. Beautiful things on high, over in yonder sky, thus I shall leave this shore, counting my treasures, Lord, where we shall never die. Carry me by and by, never to sorrow more, heavenly shore. Beautiful God, beautiful land, beautiful God, beautiful land, beautiful God, shining so fair, beautiful mansions bright, gather us there.
Lord, we ask that you be with those who are sick, and those who are needy, and those who are not with us, that you guide them and be with them that they might find something. Lord, we ask that you be with us as we go through our week and guide us and put us one time. We're so thankful for this food that you give, that you bless us with, and we pray that it will be in earth.